My parents spent my wedding fund on my twin, so I cut them off. But when they came crawling back, I gave them a lesson they'd never forget. I am a 23-year-old female. I am going to lay it all out here. My twin sister Allison and I have had this rivalry for as long as I can remember. I guess that is not unusual for siblings, but in my case, it was not just between us. It was like my parents were pushing us into it without even realizing. They have always treated Allison like she is something special, and I was just there. I mean, we are twins, right? Should we not be treated equally? But no, from day one, Allison has been their golden child. And here is the thing, it is all because she is 12 minutes older than me. Yeah, you heard that right, 12 minutes. That is apparently all it takes to become the favorite. Growing up, it was always about her. Allison was the miracle baby, the one who could do no wrong. I was not a bad kid or anything, but no matter what I did, she always got the praise. If she got a C on a test, it was like, oh, honey, you tried your best. But when I got an A, barely a nod. I remember this one time in elementary school, I won this big award for a science fair project I worked my butt off for. I stayed up late and made this whole volcano thing with smoke and lava. Okay, it was baking soda and vinegar, but you get the point. And when I showed my parents the ribbon, they were like, that's nice, but Allison had a tough day. Can we talk about this later? I did not even bother showing them awards after that. The worst part is they did not even hide it. They acted like it was normal to treat us so differently. My dad used to joke about how Allison was their firstborn, and even though we are twins, that 12 minutes somehow made her the older sister. It drove me nuts. I remember getting so frustrated when we were kids. I would scream at them, asking why they treated her like she was special and ignored me. My mom would just brush it off like I was being overly sensitive, and Allison would just smirk. The dynamic stuck all through high school too. I threw myself into academics, sports, extracurriculars, anything to get their attention. I figured if I could just outshine Allison, maybe they would finally notice me. I was top of my class, joined every club I could, and even played varsity soccer. I was not some slacker, you know. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. Meanwhile, Allison did not even try. She was one of those people who just coasted through life, doing the bare minimum but always getting by on charm. She knew how to make people feel sorry for her, and it worked. She would pull that poor me act, and suddenly everyone was rallying around her, telling her how amazing she was. Meanwhile, I was busting my ass and getting nothing. One Thanksgiving when I was like 16, my drunk uncle let it slip that my parents did not even plan on having twins. They only wanted one kid, and when they found out they were having two, they freaked out. Apparently, my mom was worried about how they would handle two babies, and my dad, being my dad, just shrugged and said, we'll figure it out. But somehow, in their heads, figuring it out meant only giving one of us all the attention. That one was, of course, Allison. I was sitting at the dinner table, and when my uncle said that, it felt like everything clicked. All those years of wondering why they did not care about my accomplishments, it all made sense. I was not the child they wanted, Allison was. I think that was the moment I gave up trying to win them over. I stopped caring about what they thought of me and focused on myself. After high school, I got accepted into a top business school on a full scholarship. I was the valedictorian of my class. Allison, on the other hand, barely scraped by and ended up going to some regular college. My graduation was this huge deal for me, like, I worked for years to get to that point, and I was so proud of myself. You would think my parents would have been proud too, right? Nope. They did not even come to the ceremony. I will never forget how my mom said, we can't make it, sweetie. Allison needs us to help her move out of her dorm. It was just another slap in the face, but by that point, I was used to it. Allison always came first. I think deep down, I still hoped they would wake up and realize how unfair they were being, but that never happened. When we turned 21, Allison had this huge party with all her friends, and my parents paid for everything. Venue, catering, the works. For me, they got me a $50 gift card. I did not even bother going to her party, it was too much. I could not stand to be in the same room as all those people fawning over her while I sat in the corner like an afterthought. At that point, we were both living at home again. Allison had graduated, but she could not find a job, so she was basically just hanging around the house doing nothing. Meanwhile, I was interning at this big firm, working my butt off, and planning for my future. But my parents did not care about that. They were more worried about Allison's job search than my actual career. The breaking point for me was when I found out about the wedding fund. My grandma, God bless her, left both me and Allison money for our weddings when she passed. She made sure we each got the same amount because she knew how my parents treated us. But what did my parents do? They spent my share on Allison's wedding. They used my inheritance, the money that was supposed to be for my future, on her. I did not find out until the Thanksgiving dinner when my uncle spilled the beans. He was drunk, going on and on about how expensive Allison's wedding had been and how my parents had to dip into both of our wedding funds to cover it. I was furious. They did not even ask me, they just spent my money on Allison like I did not matter. The next day, I confronted my parents about it. I thought maybe they would apologize or offer to make it right. Instead, they just shrugged and said they would pay me back eventually. They did not seem to understand why I was so upset. My dad actually said, "Well, Allison needed it more. You're more responsible, you'll figure it out." When I heard him say that, I was done. I did not even think twice about packing my stuff and getting out of there. I did not make some dramatic exit or anything, but it was clear I was not going to stay in a house where I was treated like I did not matter. I just wanted to disappear from their lives like they had always done to me. I had been holding on for so long, hoping they would realize what they were doing, but it was obvious that was not going to happen. It was time for me to move on. I remember the day I left so clearly. I was sitting in my room, staring at the walls, wondering how things got this bad. I had this old suitcase from high school, and I started throwing clothes in it. I did not take much, just the essentials. The funny part is no one even noticed. My parents were downstairs, probably talking about Allison or whatever. I do not know if they assumed I was just going out for the day or what, but no one asked where I was going, not a word. I packed up and left while they were still inside, completely clueless. It felt weird, like I was sneaking out, but at the same time, I felt so relieved. I was not angry anymore, just tired of it all. Tired of being ignored, tired of pretending everything was okay when it clearly was not. I was ready to be done with them, with the constant favoritism and all the baggage that came with it. I did not have a solid plan at first. Luckily, I had some good friends who were willing to let me crash at their place for a while. It was not ideal, but I knew it would not be for long. The internship I was doing at the time had hinted at offering me a full-time position, so I was not too worried about figuring things out. I knew I would land on my feet eventually, and honestly, that was more than I could say for Allison. Living with friends was actually a breath of fresh air. They treated me like I mattered, which was something I had not felt in a long time. We would hang out after work, watch movies, grab food, all the stuff I should have been doing with my family but never did. I guess being around people who actually cared made me realize how messed up things had been with my parents. One night, after we had ordered pizza and were just lounging on the couch, one of my friends asked about my parents. I had not really talked about the situation much. I mean, I had mentioned the basics, like how I was not close to them, but I had not gone into detail. I was not ready to unpack all the crap with Allison, the wedding fund, and everything else that led up to me leaving. But that night, it all just sort of spilled out. I told them everything, how my parents had always favored Allison, how they had spent my wedding money on her, how they had not even bothered to ask if I was okay when I moved out. The more I talked, the more I realized just how badly it had affected me. My friends were shocked. They could not believe how blatant the favoritism was. One of them said, "Man, no wonder you left. That's messed up." And hearing someone else say it out loud made me feel validated, like I was not overreacting or being too sensitive. It was a messed up situation, and leaving was the best thing I could have done. After a couple of weeks staying with my friends, things started looking up. My internship offered me the full-time position I had been hoping for, which meant I could finally afford my own place. It was a modest apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine. I was proud of it, especially because I had earned it all on my own, no handouts, no help from my parents, just me working hard and making it happen. The day I moved into my new apartment was one of the best days of my life. I remember standing in the empty living room, looking around at the bare walls and thinking, this is it. I did this. It felt like a fresh start, a clean break from everything that had happened with my family. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I settled into my new life pretty quickly. Work was going great, and I was finally feeling like I had control over my own future. No more competing with Allison for attention, no more worrying about what my parents thought of me. It was just me, living my life the way I wanted to, and honestly, it was a huge relief. Of course, there were times when I would think about my family. I was not completely heartless. I would wonder how they were doing, if they ever thought about me. But every time I got close to picking up the phone, I would stop myself. What would be the point? I knew they had not changed, and I was not ready to go back to the way things were, not after everything they had put me through. Then came my birthday. It was my first birthday since moving out, and part of me hoped, just a tiny part, that they would reach out. Maybe they would call, maybe they would finally realize they had messed up and try to make things right. But when the day came, The only call I got from them was about a plumbing issue at the house. They did not even wish me a happy birthday. I guess that was when it really hit me. They did not care, not about me, not about what I had been through. To them, I was just someone who could fix their problems when they needed help. That is all I had ever been, someone they could rely on when it was convenient for them, but never someone they actually cared about. After that, I made a promise to myself, I was not going to let them drag me down anymore. I had done fine without them, and I would continue to do fine on my own. I had my friends, my job, my apartment, everything I needed. And I did not need their approval to feel good about my life. I was better off without them. After a couple of months in my new apartment, things were finally falling into place. I was getting used to living on my own, and work was going well. I was still in that stage where every little thing felt like an achievement. Paying bills, furnishing my place, just having my own space to come back to at the end of the day. It was not the fanciest place, but it was mine. For once, I felt in control of my life. I had not spoken to my parents since I left. It was not like I was avoiding them, but I also was not going out of my way to reconnect either. They had not reached out, so I figured they were fine with things being the way they were. Honestly, I did not miss them, not really. Sure, there were moments where I would wonder how they were doing or if they thought about me, but it was not like I was sitting around waiting for a call from them. And then one day, I got that call, except it was not from them. It was from my uncle. I had not heard from him in years, so when I saw his name pop up on my phone, I almost did not answer. But curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up. "Hey, it's Uncle Greg," he started, his voice a little shaky. I could tell right away something was up. He is usually the kind of guy who is always upbeat, even when things are not going great. "I need to talk to you about your parents." My stomach dropped. I did not know what to expect, but I knew it was not going to be good. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "They've been in an accident," he said. "A pretty bad one. They're in the hospital." I just kind of froze. I did not know what to say. My first thought was that they were okay. They had to be okay, right? But he kept talking, filling in the details I had not asked for yet. Apparently, they were driving back from some event when a truck hit their car. My mom was hurt pretty bad, and my dad was in critical condition. They had been in the hospital for a few days, but no one had told me. No one thought to call me until now. "They wanted me to let you know," he said, his voice softer now. "I think they want to see you." I was not sure how to feel about that. My parents and I had not spoken in years, and now, after everything, they wanted to see me. It did not sit right with me, but at the same time, I could not shake the feeling that maybe this was it. Maybe this was the moment things would change. Maybe they realized how messed up things had been and wanted to fix it. But then again, that felt too easy, too convenient. I asked if Allison had been there, and Uncle Greg told me she had. Apparently, she had shown up once but did not stay long. She was busy with her new family and did not want to leave her step-kids for too long. Typical Allison, always making things about her. But here is the kicker, when Allison found out they did not have health insurance, she refused to help. She did not want to ask her rich husband for money so soon after the wedding, and she definitely did not want to deal with the bills herself. So my parents were stuck. They had no savings, no insurance, and now they were reaching out to me to cover their medical expenses. The more Uncle Greg talked, the angrier I got. It was not like I wished anything bad on my parents, but this was the first time they tried to contact me in 2 years, and it was not to apologize or make amends. It was because they needed money. After everything they had done, spending my wedding fund, ignoring me, favoring Allison, they had the audacity to ask me for help. I did not know what to say. Part of me felt guilty for even thinking about saying no. I mean, they were my parents, right? But at the same time, I could not just forget everything that had happened. They had not cared about me for years, and now they wanted me to swoop in and save them when things went south. "I don't know what to do," I finally said. It was not a lie, I really did not know. Uncle Greg was quiet for a moment before he spoke again. "I get it," he said. "I know things haven't been easy between you and your parents. But they're in a tough spot right now. Just think about it, okay?" I told him I would, but the second I hung up, I felt like I had been sucker punched. It felt like no matter how far I had come, no matter how much I distanced myself from them, they still had this way of pulling me back into their mess. I did not want to be the bad guy here, but I also did not want to be the one they only turned to when they needed something. For the next couple of days, I went back and forth on what to do. Should I help them out? Should I visit them at the hospital? Was this some kind of test, or were they really just that desperate? I tried to put myself in their shoes, but it was hard. If it had been the other way around, would they have helped me? I was not so sure. I did not tell anyone about the call at first. It felt too complicated to explain, and I did not want my friends to think I was being cold-hearted. I mean, what kind of daughter refuses to help her parents after an accident? But at the same time, what kind of parents ignore their kid for years, only to reach out when they need financial help? It was not until a few days later, when one of my friends noticed I was off, that I finally told someone what was going on. We were sitting in my apartment, just catching up after work, and she asked if everything was okay. I must have been pretty bad at hiding my stress because she did not let it go. I told her about the accident, about the call from Uncle Greg, and about how my parents wanted me to cover their medical bills. She listened quietly, and when I was done, she said, "Honestly, I don't think you owe them anything." Hearing someone else say it out loud made me feel better, but it did not make the decision any easier. She was right, though. After everything they had put me through, I did not owe them anything. But still, it felt like I was walking this tightrope between doing what was right and doing what was best for me, and I was not sure which side I was going to land on. I spent the next few days feeling like I was walking around in a fog. My brain was stuck on this loop, going back and forth between should I help them? And they don't deserve my help. It was exhausting, and it felt like no matter what I decided, I was going to come out of it feeling like the bad guy. It was frustrating because I had not asked to be dragged back into their lives, but here I was, right in the middle of it again. I kept telling myself I did not owe them anything. They spent my wedding money on Allison. They barely acknowledged my existence unless they needed something. So why should I swoop in now and save the day just because they were in a bad spot? It is not like they had ever done that for me. Still, that little voice in the back of my head would not shut up. "But they're your parents," it whispered, making me feel guilty for even considering saying no. That guilt ate at me for days. I kept thinking about how people would judge me if they knew the full story, like, what kind of person lets their parents struggle after a car accident? But at the same time, I knew the full story, and that is what made it so complicated. Eventually, I decided I had to stop torturing myself. I was not going to drag this out any longer. I had to make a decision one way or another so I could stop feeling like I was stuck in limbo. And after a lot of back and forth, I finally made up my mind. I was not going to help them. It sounds harsh, I know, but when I really thought about it, I realized that this was not about the accident or the medical bills or any of that. It was about the years of favoritism, the way they treated me like I did not exist unless they needed something, and the fact that they only reached out now because they were desperate. If they had not gotten into that car accident, I would have never heard from them again. And that is what sealed it for me. Once I made my decision, I felt this weird sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I still did not feel great about it, but at least I was not stuck in that constant loop of indecision anymore. I was moving forward, and that was something. I knew I could not just ignore them forever, though. They had been calling and texting nonstop, and I could not keep dodging their calls. So one night after work, I sat down and braced myself for what was coming. I figured it was time to let them know where I stood. I thought about texting them, but that felt too impersonal, so I decided to call. When my mom picked up, I could tell she had been waiting for this call. Her voice was all tense, like she was trying to keep it together but could not quite hide how upset she was. She jumped straight into it, talking about how bad things were and how much they needed help. I let her talk for a while, just nodding along and saying every now and then, but my mind was already made up. Finally, when she paused to take a breath, I said, "Mom, I'm sorry you're going through this, but I can't help with the bills." There was this long silence on the other end of the line. I could feel the tension through the phone, and I knew she was trying to hold back, but then she snapped. "What do you mean you can't help? We're your parents. You can't just leave us like this," she shouted. Her voice cracked, and for a second, I thought she might cry, but instead, she just kept yelling. I tried to explain. I told her that after everything that had happened between us, after all the years of being ignored and overlooked, I did not feel like I owed them anything. I told her that it was not my responsibility to fix their problems when they never cared about mine. That did not go over well. "You're ungrateful," she hissed. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" I could not help but laugh a little. "Mom, everything you've done for me? Like what? Spending my wedding money on Allison? Treating me like I didn't exist unless you needed something?" That really set her off. She started shouting about how they had no choice, how Allison needed the money more, how they always put their kids first. It was like she could not see how ridiculous she sounded. After a few minutes of listening to her go on and on, I realized there was no point in arguing. She was not going to see things from my perspective, and I was not going to change my mind. So I just let her finish her rant, and when she finally ran out of steam, I said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. But I can't help you." And with that, I hung up. I sat there for a while after the call ended, just staring at my phone. I felt this strange mix of emotions: relief, guilt, frustration. It was weird. On one hand, I knew I had done the right thing for myself. On the other hand, it still felt like I had just cut off my own family. But then again, had they ever really been my family? It did not take long for the fallout to start. My mom called back almost immediately, but I did not answer. She left this long, rambling voicemail about how I was ungrateful, how I was turning my back on them in their time of need, all that usual stuff. I deleted it without even listening to the whole thing. My dad did not call, but that was not surprising. He rarely said much anyway, except for the occasional grumble about how I should be more like Allison. I guess he figured my mom would handle it like she always did. And then came the texts from Uncle Greg. He was trying to be the peacemaker, I guess, telling me I should reconsider, that family is important, and that I would regret this decision someday. I appreciated his concern, but it did not change anything. I was not going to cave. I blocked their numbers after that. I did not need the constant guilt-tripping and drama. I had my own life to focus on, and I was not going to let them drag me back into their mess. I felt bad about blocking Uncle Greg, but I knew he would just keep pushing if I did not. He meant well, but he did not understand what it was like to grow up in that house, to always be the second choice. So that was it. I had made my decision, and I was sticking to it. It had been about a week since I made the call and officially cut ties with my parents. After that conversation with my mom, I expected some fallout, but honestly, things were quieter than I thought they would be. I had not heard from them directly since I blocked their numbers, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I did not feel that constant weight on my chest. I had a moment to breathe, no guilt-tripping, no manipulation, just peace. I was starting to feel like I could finally move forward. Work was going well, I had my apartment in order, and I was just focusing on myself for once. But of course, that did not last long. One evening, I was sitting in my living room, catching up on some work emails, when I heard a knock on my door. I was not expecting anyone, and most of my friends knew to text before coming over. I figured it might be a delivery or something, but when I opened the door, there she was, Allison. I had not seen her in person since I left home, and I was not exactly thrilled to see her now. She looked different, though, polished, almost like she had stepped straight out of some magazine. Her hair was perfectly done, her clothes were expensive, and she carried herself in that way she always had, like the whole world revolved around her. But even with all the changes on the outside, I knew exactly who was standing in front of me. "Hey," she said, smiling like we were long-lost best friends. I did not say anything at first. I was too shocked to even process why she was standing there. After everything that had happened, the last person I expected to show up at my door was Allison. Part of me wanted to slam the door in her face, but I was too curious to do that. So I stepped aside and let her in, even though I had a sinking feeling about where this was going. She walked in, looking around like she was inspecting the place, probably comparing it to her fancy life with her rich husband. I did not care. I was not ashamed of what I had. I worked hard for it, and unlike her, I did not rely on anyone else to get it. After a few awkward seconds of silence, she finally spoke. "I wanted to talk to you about Mom and Dad," she said, as if that was supposed to surprise me. Of course she wanted to talk about them. Why else would she show up out of nowhere? But instead of jumping straight into it, she started talking about her life, her husband, her stepkids, how great everything was for her. It was like she could not help but brag about how perfect things were going for her, even when she was supposed to be there for something serious. I stood there listening, nodding along, but I was not really paying attention. My mind was already 2 steps ahead, waiting for her to get to the point. I knew what this was. Allison was not here out of the goodness of her heart. She never was. After what felt like forever, she finally said, "Mom and Dad are still really struggling, you know. They've been in a lot of pain, and they need help." I just stared at her. I was not sure what she expected me to say. Did she think I was going to change my mind because she showed up at my door and threw some guilt at me? If anything, it made me even more annoyed. "They don't need my help," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "They have other family. Why aren't they asking for help from them?" Allison looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "You know how they are. They don't want to ask for help from anyone else." That is when I realized what this was really about. It was not just about our parents. Allison did not want to deal with them either. She came to me because she wanted to pass the responsibility on to someone else, me. Typical. "They already asked me," I said, trying to keep my cool. "And I told them no." Allison's face changed. Her smile faded, and she looked at me like I had just said something unforgivable. "You told them no? They're our parents, and they're in the hospital, and you just said no? I could feel the anger bubbling up, but I did not want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me lose it. Yeah, Allison, I told them no. After everything they've done to me, after ignoring me for years, they only reached out because they needed money. I don't owe them anything. She opened her mouth like she was about to argue, but I cut her off before she could even start. You don't get it, Allison. You've always been their favorite. You've always had everything handed to you. But me? I had to fight for everything. And now that they're in trouble, they think they can just come to me and I'll fix it? No, that's not how it works. Allison just stood there, staring at me like she could not believe what she was hearing. I guess she was not used to me standing up for myself. But I was done playing that game. I came here because they need you, she finally said, her voice quieter now. They don't have anyone else. I shook my head. They have you. You're their favorite. You've always been their priority. So why don't you help them? That is when Allison's face twisted into something bitter. I have my own family now. I can't be running back and forth between them and my husband and stepkids. I have responsibilities. There it was, the real reason she was here. It was not about helping our parents. It was about making sure she did not have to be the one to do it. Then you understand why I said no. Allison did not have a response to that. She just stared at me, probably trying to figure out how to manipulate the situation in her favor. But I was not falling for it anymore, not this time. She stood there for a few more seconds before finally saying, I just thought you'd be better than this. I almost laughed at that. Better than this? I was finally standing up for myself, and she wanted to make me feel guilty about it. Yeah, well, I said, walking to the door and holding it open, I thought you'd be better than asking me to clean up your mess. Allison did not say anything as she walked out. She just gave me one last look, and then she was gone. I closed the door behind her and let out a long breath. It felt like I had been holding it in the whole time. I knew it was not the last I would hear from her or my parents, but for now, I was done. They could figure things out without me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control, and honestly, it felt pretty damn good.